Vampire Kisses by Ellen Schreiber. Publishers HarperCollins. Chapter 1 Little Monsters. It first happened when I was 5. I just finished coloring my kindergarten book. It was filled with Picasso-like drawings of my mom and dad, an Elmer glued tissue papered collage, and the answers to questions, favorite color, pets, best friends, etc., written down by our 100-year-old teacher, Miss Peevish. My classmates and I were sitting in a semicircle on the floor in the reading area. "Bradley, what do you want to be when you grow up?" Miss Peevish asked after all the other questions had been answered. "A firefighter," he shouted. "Cindy?" A nurse?" Cindy Warren whispered meekly. Miss Peevish went through the rest of the class. Police officers, astronaut, football players. Finally, it was my turn. "Raven, what do you want to be when you grow up?" Miss Peevish asked, her green eyes staring through me. I said nothing. "An actress?" I shook my head. "A doctor?" "Nuh-uh," I said. "A flight attendant?" "Yuck," I replied. "Then what?" she asked, annoyed. I thought for a moment. I want to be a vampire," I shouted to the shock and amazement of Miss Peevish and my classmates. For a moment, I thought she started to laugh. Maybe she really did. The children sitting next to me inched away. I spent most of my childhood watching others inch away. I was conceived on my dad's waterbed, or on the rooftop of my mom's college dorm under twinkling stars, depending on which one of my parents is telling the story. They were soulmates that couldn't part with the 70s, true love mixed with drugs, some raspberry incense, and a music of Grateful Dead. A beaded, jeweled, halter-top, cut-off, blue-jeaned, barefooted girl, intertwined with a long-haired, unshaven, Elton John, spectacled, sun-tanned, leather-vested, bell-bottomed, and sandaled guy. I think they were lucky I wasn't more eccentric. I could have wanted to be a beaded-haired hippie werewolf, but somehow I became obsessed with vampires. Sarah and Paul Madison became more responsible after my entrance into this world. Or, I'll rephrase it. Let's just say my parents were less glassy-eyed. They sold the Volkswagen flower-powered van that they were living in and actually started renting property. Our hippie apartment was decorated with 3D glow-in-the-dark flower posters and orange tubes with a fly Play-Doh substance that moved on its own. Lava lamps that you could stare at forever. It was the best time ever. The three of us laughed and played chutes and ladders and squeezed Twinkies between our teeth. We stayed up late watching Dracula movies, Dark Shadows with the infamous Barnabas Collins, and Batman on the black and white TV we'd received when we opened up a bank account. I felt secure under the blanket of midnight, rubbing my mom's growing belly, which made noises like the orange lava lamps. I figured she was going to give birth to more moving Play-Doh. Everything changed when she gave birth to the Play-Doh. Only it wasn't Play-Doh. She gave birth to a nerd boy. How could she? How could she destroy all the Twinkie nights? Now, she went to bed early, and that creation that my parents called Billy cried and fussed all night. I was suddenly alone. It was Dracula, the Dracula on TV that kept me company while Mom slept, Nerd Boy wailed, and Dad changed smelly diapers. And if that wasn't enough, suddenly they sent me to a place that wasn't my apartment, that didn't have wild 3D flower posters on the walls, but boring collages of kids' handprints. Who decorated around here, I wondered. It was overcrowded with Sears catalog girls in frilly dresses and Sears catalog boys in tapered pants and perfectly combed hair. Mom and Dad called it kindergarten. "They'll be your friends," my mom reassured me, as I clung to her side for dear life. She waved goodbye and blew me kisses as I stood alone that matronly Miss Peevish, which was as alone as I can get. I watched my mom walk away with Nerd Boy on her lap as she took him back to the place filled with glow-in-the-dark posters, monster movies, and Twinkies. Somehow I made it through the day, cutting and gluing black paper on black paper, finger painting Barbie's lips black, and telling the assistant teacher ghost stories. While the Sears catalog kids ran around like they were all cousins at an all-American family picnic, I was even happy to see Nordboy when Mom finally came to pick me up. That night she found me with my lips pressed against the TV screen, trying to kiss Christopher Lee in the horror of Dracula. "Raven, what are you doing up so late? You have school tomorrow." "What?" I said. The Hostess cherry pie that I had been eating fell to the floor as my heart fell with it. "But I thought it was just that one time," I said, panicked. "Sweet Raven, you have to go every day." "Every day?" The words echoed inside my head. It was a life sentence. That night, Nerdboy couldn't hope to compete with my dramatic wailing and crying. As I lay alone in my bed, I prayed for eternal darkness and the sun that never rose. Unfortunately, the next day I awoke to a blinding light and a monster headache. I longed to be around at least one person that could connect with me, but I couldn't find any. At home or school, at home the lava lamps were replaced with Tiffany-style floral lamps. The glow-in-the-dark posters were covered with Laura Ashley wallpaper, and our grainy black and white TV was upgraded to a 25-inch color model. At school, instead of singing the songs of Mary Poppins, I whistled the theme to The Exorcist. Halfway through kindergarten, I tried to become a vampire. Trevor Mitchell, a perfectly combed blonde with sparkling green eyes, was my nemesis. From that moment, I stared at him, down, when he tried to cut in front of me on the slide. He hated me, because I was the only kid who wasn't afraid of him. The kids and teachers kissed up to him because his father owned most of the land that their houses sat on. Trevor was in a biting phase, not because he wanted to be a vampire like me, but just because he was mean. He had taken pieces of flesh out of everyone but me, and I was starting to get ticked off. We were on the playground, standing by the basketball hoop, when I pinched the skin of his puny little arm so hard I thought blood would squirt out. His face turned beet red. I stood motionless and waited. Trevor's body trembled with anger, and his eyes swelled with vengeance as I mischievously smiled back. Then he left his dental impression on my expectant hand. Miss Peevish was forced to sit him against the school wall, and I happily danced around the playground waiting to transform into a vampire bat. "That Raven is an odd one," I overheard Miss Peevish saying to another teacher, as I skipped past the crying Trevor, who was now throwing a fit against the hard blacktop. I blew him a grateful kiss with my bitten hand. I wore my wound proudly as I got to the school swing. I could fly now, right? But I need something to take me into warp speed. The seat went as high as the top of the fence, but I was aiming for the puffy clouds. The rusty swing started to buckle when I jumped off. I planned to fly across the playground all the way to the startled Trevor. Instead, I plummeted to the muddy earth, doing further damage to my tooth-marked hand. I cried, more from the fact that I didn't possess supernatural powers like my heroes on TV than because of my throbbing flesh. My bite trapped under ice. Miss Peevish sat me against the wall to rest while the spoiled, snot-nosed Trevor was now free to play. He blew me a teasing kiss and said, "Thank you." I stuck my tongue out and called him a name I heard a mobster say in The Godfather. Miss Peevish immediately sent me inside. I was sent inside a lot during my childhood recess. I was destined to take a recess from recess.